Hello, everybody. So you're here for the Mic Plus webinar, learning how to work with the import and export tool. Well, thank you for joining. This is the second webinar here in autumn about Mic Plus, every second Wednesday. My name is Thomas. I'm Global Product Specialist for Mic Plus Pipeflow here in Vienna. And Evan is in the background. He's helping me. He's our training specialist. This is the agenda, so short introduction, and then we go straight into hands-on import from shapefiles. I'll talk a little bit about the concepts and configuration details in the background. Then comes the next hands-on session about import from Excel, and we'll finish with an export to CAD. Most of the examples are about water distribution and collection systems, but you can apply the knowledge equally for rivers. First, let's clarify what the whole webinar is about, because when clients talk about import and export, they have different options in mind, and it has a broad meaning. First of all, we think about model data, like the elevations of nodes and the diameters of pipes, water demand in houses or catchment parameters. And importing usually means to pull that in from some sort of database or data container. Exporting mean more or less the same thing, although we usually use a GIS data container. But we may also think about time series when talking about import and export, and importing is usually boundary conditions like rainfall data and water levels in rivers. Export means usually exporting result time series, like here on the right-hand side, you have a discharge in reaches. And finally, we could also talk about maps, background maps, which we import into Mic Plus, either a city map or here digital elevation model. And exporting maps means usually exporting maps with results. So these are the main features, the main doors of Mic Plus. All of them are open. We can also export longitudinal profiles, animations. So there is more to say about import and export, but today we'll concentrate on model data import and export. Mic Plus offers two menus to do so. The first one is on the left-hand side in the File menu, and this is for predefined mic formats down there, import and export. It's almost like the Open button. The difference is that it imports and converts older formats mostly into Mic Plus, or it imports data which is more or less one-to-one used in Mic Plus, like Swim and EPANET. The same goes for export, some mic formats or Swim or EPANET. But that's a predefined import and export. We can't change anything when we press the button. The other import is in the Tools menu here under Import and Export, and that's the fully flexible data exchange, and that's the one we are going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. We won't talk about ArcGIS integration. That's another story. The documentation about import and export is mainly to be found in the Model Manager User Guide. So that's chapter 6, and it's even longer. I think it's almost 50 pages about import and export. So you'll find many details here. Or I can suggest to consult our blended course about introduction to hydrological and hydraulic models. And here, module 3 is import and export. And if you have a valid SMA, this course is for free to you. Okay, so let's start with the shapefiles. And I'm more or less immediately switching to Mic Plus. First I want to show you how the data looks like we want to import. We have 3 shape files here, one with nodes, the ID, ground level, bottom level. We have links with a cross section, the height and the width of the pipe. There is no ID here, by the way. And catchments, so they have again an ID, which is called number in the shapefile. We have the manhole where each catchment is connected to, and some hydrological parameters, the total area, roof area, street area. Yep, and with that, I'll go to Mike Plus instead of working with these slides. And let me see, can I move the, no. So this is an empty database, which I've opened just before the webinar, and we'll switch to tools and to import and export. Here is the import export editor. It has two pages or two panels, the job and the assignment side. I start with the job side. You see the standard import is shapefile. There are some others, so I keep shapefile. And then I choose the directory where all the shapefiles are stored. So this is a directory, and it has 3 shapefiles in it: catchments, links, and nodes. And I choose shape. And if I hover here over, I see, yeah, that worked fine. So I'm looking at the shapefiles directory as a container. That's the target. That's the current Mike Plus database, hopefully. Yes, it is. Always better to check. And I'm changing some of the parameters here, but I'll talk about them later on. And already now we can look at the shapefiles. If we click Source Preview here, Mike Plus looks at the shapefiles, and yeah, here it is. So we have the table. Sorry, here we have the tables. I didn't want to dock the window. 3 tables. So, catchments, links, and nodes. And it's always good to check whether you see all the attributes, whether the number of rows is correct, so just to make sure Mike Plus is able to pull in all the data which is available outside. You'll also see that Mike Plus adds some attributes automatically which are connected to geometry. So that works fine. And we can move on, I think. In most cases, we have only one job on the left-hand side. We could pull in several different sources, like shapefiles and then some access database or whatever it is. But in most cases, we just import from one. On the right-hand side, on the other hand, we have several sections. Each section looks at one of the tables and pulls in some of the fields. So let's start with the first section. I call it import nodes. That's up to me. Here I see the shapefiles. Let's start with the nodes. And here I choose the target, which is called MSM node. I'm importing to a collection system, by the way, here, MSM node. And here, down there, we insert assignments. So I can take the first column from the shapefile, and I tell the interface that I want the MikeUrban ID on the left-hand side. So this maps the node ID to the MikeUrban ID. By the way, if you don't know all the table names and field names, you get used to that rather quickly. I think if you work with Mike Plus, just to show you, if you open any of the editors, like the node editor, and if you hover here over the fields, you see that this is table MSM node and field type number or field diameter or invert level. So this helps to create these assignments. Let's add a few more, I think 3 more. We pick the ground level, and this is the ground level. By the way, I'm now typing, and Mac Plus auto-completes, so it's easier. And here's the bottom level. And this is called invert level. Oops, sorry, invert level in Mac Plus. And finally, and this is very important, we are working with shapefiles, so they have a geometry, and I want to use this geometry as well. So I map geometry to geometry. Yeah, I think this is all I wanted to show you. We can also look at the, well, first we have to verify. So this checks whether everything is correct, and then I can click on target preview, and this shows me the table before I really write it into Mac Plus. Looks fine. And then I click run. And on the map, we see already all the nodes. And if we open the editor, we see that, well, I mean, we have the ID, we have the coordinates, we have the ground level, the bottom level. The diameter doesn't contain any values on purpose. We think that diameter is something which shouldn't have a standard value. We have to provide it on our own. We could either use the field calculator now to populate it, but if we want to do that during import export already, we can add another assignment, which writes into the diameter field, diameter, and this is the diameter of the manhole, and assigns a standard value. I open the expression editor here. Hold on, here it is. So it says diameter equals, and it needs some value, 1 meter in my case. I'll say okay. Yep. And if we verify and run again, we'll see that nothing happened because, yeah, there are transfer modes which handle how to add data. And the default is append and skip existing. So Mike Plus noticed here's the blue row, which indicates the ID row, and Mike Plus, yeah, saw that there is already a node with the same MacUrban ID and didn't add any new data. So we have to change that to overwrite. And now it will really, hopefully, yeah, add this diameter one. I talk about the transfer modes later on. Okay. Let's save the specification for later use. You know, everything you see here, you can save and reuse later on. And this is import from shape webinar. So next section is for the links. Import links. Well, I prefer to have that afterwards. It doesn't really matter in this case, but to me, it's more logic. I take the link shapefile. The target is the MSM link table. Yeah, let's overwrite that right from the beginning. And now instead of inserting one column after the other, I could also hit automap, and it will take all the available attributes from the shapefile, and it will also try to automap them. So if something has exactly the same name in the MacUrban database, Mac Plus database, it would map them. So let's see. We have, first of all, we have the cross section. And if we look at the source, links, you see that the cross-section here is a text. It is either circular or somewhere down here it will say egg, I think. I'm missing it. Well, there are some egg shapes. Not sure they are now. I want to assign the proper type, because in the pipes and canals, the link type is either circular or egg shape, whatever it is. And in the database, this is a number. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want to assign 1 where the text in the shapefile is circular, and 5 where the text in the shapefile is egg. And I could do that by some fancy. Let's pick the type number here. Type number, yeah. So I could do that with some fancy if-then expression here. We have that, but it's, yeah, I don't like that. We want to be as transparent as possible. So it's much easier to say, okay, type number is 1, I mean circular. And for some reason, we have a slight bug here because I have to do that twice for some reason. Okay, type number is 1, and here comes the if condition. Type number is 1 if my text in the field cross-section equals circular. And we add another line, insert assignment with type number 5. Oh, okay. If cross-section equals egg. Oops, wrong. Here we are. We'll check later on whether this is okay. Geometry is geometry. Height, the height in the shapefile is in millimeters. This goes for circular and egg shapes into the field diameter in Mike Plus. And I could add something like times 1,000 here, but again, to make the thing more transparent, I could say that the source unit is not meters, but millimeters. And then it's a simple mapping, including conversion of units. Offset we won't use, and width in millimeter we wouldn't use. So verify, target preview, links. I don't know what happened. Oh yeah, here they are, sorry. Here are my egg shapes, the 5s. I was already concerned whether I messed up my source data. Okay, so run. And let's have a look at the result. Yeah, looks good. I want to draw your attention to the fact that some of these pipes have vertices, and these vertices, these nodes along the pipe, have been imported using the geometry to geometry mapping. If we look at the table here, so we imported a link ID, the type, the diameter, and Mic plus or the input routine pick the from node and the to node, which is important for topology. I'll talk about that later on again, but the important thing is that now the whole network is connected. So if I take this connectivity tool here and I click on any node, it selects all connected elements and there are none left out. And connectivity is sort of the basis of connectivity are these from and to node fields. That's slightly different from the old microurban. If for some reason during import this connectivity thing doesn't work, just click around here a few times. I sometimes got the impression that the interface is somehow not 100% reliable here, but you'll see it immediately. Okay, just looking at the time. Yeah. The last bit would be the catchments, but instead of making those two assignments, I simply load a predefined import, and I'll talk about the two sections here. So the third one looks at the catchment, writes into the catchment, it picks the geometry, it picks the microurban ID, it makes some computations here. So the impervious area is the roofs and the streets divided by the total area, and then some default parameters. Interestingly, to create the catchment connections, I pick again the catchment shapefile, write into catchment connections, and I use the catchment ID, the manhole ID, and the type number 1 is again a default. And if I run, you'll see, yeah, we've imported the catchments as well. And they all have the connections too. So here are the IDs. Here is the time area parameter, and here is the connection to a certain node. Okay, let's, after this very quick introduction into the import-export, let's have a look at the concepts behind those this import and export tool. And I start with the slides again. Concepts and configuration details. The data flow has several steps. First of all, we pick some source type. In our case, it was the shapefile on the source, which was the specific directory. We also pick target type, target itself, and we define something like topology settings. And if our data module is capable of processing this information, it will present the data in memory, and we've seen this data in the source preview. So this is a number of tables accessible to Mic Plus. Then we have the table configuration with sections and assignments. We also define the transfer mode. And if this definition is okay, so if verify was positive, then we'll see the data memory again, which was the target preview. And if you hit run, it sort of skips the target preview and writes directly into the target. So here in the center, we have table configuration with sections and assignments. And this here is done through the job configuration on the left side. This is the right side. This is the left side of the editor. A few words about the job configuration. First of all, which source data types Mic Plus can read? We have shapefiles. Simply pick the director with the shapefiles. For Excel, pick the Excel file, and all the tabs will appear as tables. CAD, we pick DWG, not DXF. We can read geodatabases, both file geodatabases and personal geodatabases, and they handle both tables with and without geometry. This has been developed over the last releases. And this is a personal geodatabase. This is not a general access database. For the general access database, use ODBC. Usually the drivers are pre-installed by Windows or by Office or whatever it is. Or we can read general SQLite databases. Here you have to install the drivers separately. ODBC sounds a bit general. We don't support any other ODBC drivers, up to now at least. So only those two. EasyBau is a very special format in Germany and Austria and Switzerland. Well, mostly Austria and Germany. It's an XML file with a very specific format. We can read results if you want to do anything GIS related. I've never used that one. We can read Mike Plus databases and do a lot. And SQL Server and Oracle Spatial I haven't used either. And if you look at the target types, the documentation says similar, but I think some don't work. Shape works fine, Excel works fine, CAD works fine. You'll see an example soon. Geodatabases work fine. You have just to know that you first have to create an empty directory, which is called somehow, and then .gdb. So give it a name, .gdb, and this is, you have to create that first before you can write the geodatabase. This was the case at least until now. I'm not sure what 2024 will bring. You can use Mike Plus for writing as well. I'm not sure about the other target types, to be honest. And the very special case of reading from the current Mike Plus database and writing to the current Mike database opens for special sort of editing ideas you have, because you pull from the database, you write to the database. So that could be handy if you want to do some tricks. Topology. There are two ways of correct topology. The first one, which we have used with a shapefile, is called connection from coordinates. So we had a shapefile with nodes and the geometry. There's a field geometry, and this field geometry might be binary or text format. It's not really for you to read, and it's a list of coordinates. And we see those nodes because it has a geometry. We need the geometry to see it on the map. And then there is another one with the links. Again, the geometry has more content. And we can see these on the map because they have geometry. What they don't have is information about the from node and the to node. And this is what will be supplemented by the import routine. So the tool takes the first link, looks at the start point, searches for a node, finds node A, and writes it into the table. And at the end, it will find node B. And for link 2, it will find node B and node C. And for link 3, which is visible, well, it won't write anything. But yeah, we have to correct that later on. So this means connectivity from coordinates. The other way is coordinates from connection. And that's, for example, when we handle Excel files. So we have two tables. One is the node table, again with the IDs, and then explicit columns X and Y. And then another one where we have the connectivity from node A to node B, and link 2 goes from node B to node C, and link 3 goes from node S to node T. And when importing that, Mike Plus fills the field geometry, and then we can draw the geometry. By the way, it also does that for the nodes, so they can be drawn. You see, there is no node S or node T in the node table, and therefore geometry remains empty and we can't see it. Mike Plus nonetheless helps you. On the right-hand side, we have the transfer mode, and this is to make sure that it helps you handling existing data in your database. And we have 6 transfer modes. This is the target, so the external data. Source is the external data, and target is the Mike Plus database. So this is the Mike Plus database before, which contains already something. Then you import, for example, the shapefile, and this is the Mike Plus database afterwards. And here we have 3 records and 5 attributes, and where you see color, there is something in there. Those are null values. Same for the external data set. We have IDs 2, 3, 4. A, B, C are attributes which we have, and here are null values. And override simply means that all target data will be deleted. So that's why the target only contains the red data. D and E remain empty because we didn't provide any information from the outside. Append and skip existing. So the default means only append records with a new ID. 2 and 3 already exist, so please don't touch them. Keep whatever we have so far. And then we have update. Here, the idea is that only those records which match will be updated. Anything beyond will be discarded. And you see that record 2 and 3 are sort of stamped into the original data. Those 2 values here stay, and record 4 is discarded. And the next 3 transfer modes are sort of a combination of the existing ones. Append and update does exactly what it says. It updates and it appends, like described in the earlier slide. Sync is like the above one, like append and update, but it will delete record 1. And this was a way of syncing external data with a Mike Plus database. When you have new data every year, you have deleted some pipe in the external database, and you assume that it shouldn't exist in the model either. Here we have version management now in Mike Plus. So if you update models on a regular basis, you should have a look at version management. And append all records. If a microurban ID already exists, it will be renamed. So this is the way of making sure that anything in the source table will be present in the Mike Plus database, even if a microurban ID has to be doubled. And last but not least, filter on the right-hand side on the table configuration. The purpose of filter is that you eliminate unwanted records from import. For example, imagine that you have a hierarchy level in your external data, main pipes and service pipes, and you are primary and secondary pipes, and you only want to import primary pipes. So every record which contains primary should go into the import, but the others not. So that's the way to filter those records. By the way, text is between single quotes here. Or you don't want to import any records with custom ID unknown, so that's not equal. You could import pipes longer than 2.5 meters. Decimal separator is a dot. You can have a list. Those are CAD layers, so any data where you have something in layers north region or south region will be imported. You may also check for null values, is null or is not null. And if you want to use and or, well, you simply add and or if you have to combine several conditions. Okay, so let's have a look at import from Excel. And I close this database and I open import Excel. It's more or less empty. It just contains two tanks. And now we talk water distribution. And the Excel spreadsheet itself, I can show you the spreadsheet as well. So it has three tabs. One is called My Pipes, with the pipe ID, the from node, the to node ID, diameter, material roughness, and so on. We have one with the junctions, well, coordinates, and only one attribute. And we have hydrants, which are nodes as well, or junctions as well in Mike Plus. Coordinates and the hydrant size, which we don't really need. And our challenge is to combine those two into one table. Okay, tools, import, export, add a job. And now it's not a shapefile, it's an Excel file. The source is the Excel file, which, yeah, that's good. Oh, complains that I've opened the spreadsheet here. Okay, let's try again. Yeah. Target is the database. Let's check. Yes, that's okay. Now, correct topology. Yes, and now it's the other way around. Coordinates from connection. Source preview. Well, that works. This is the Excel spreadsheet, as you've seen. And now we insert sections. Let me check my notes. I think I wanted to start with the pipes. Where's my mouse? I wanted to start with the pipes. So just check whether I forgot anything to tell you. Yeah. So let's start with the pipes. Pipes. Source is in the spreadsheet called my pipes. Target is MW pipes pipe. And we overwrite. We automap. So this is the diameter millimeters. Here it's also called diameter. And it's in millimeters as well in Mike Plus. So that's fine. From node ID to node ID have been matched. Length, well, usually we don't need the length, but I'll show you why it's important here. Pipe ID goes into Mike Urban ID. Roughness, this is called RQF, that's the one. The year is a bit tricky because year is just a number. And here, construction date is a date. So we need, year won't work. So we need a date time object. And here are loads of functions which help us to do some special conversions. And I want to create this date time out of numbers. Year, month, day. Oh, I don't have hours and minutes. So I fill in the year. Where's my year? And I say, okay, it's January 1st. Construction date is very, very detailed in Mike Plus. I'm not 100% sure why we need this level of accuracy, but that's how it is. Oh, this was, yeah, that's the function. Okay, verify. There's a warning here. It complains about doing something wrong here. I'm not sure. Oh, again, it didn't. You have to do that twice for some reason. Okay, now we have it, and now this should be green here, so no more complaints. And yeah, but I need the nodes as well. So we add the nodes, or as they are called, import junctions. Again, we automap. Of course, I have to choose some source, my junctions, target MW junction, overwrite, and now automap. Okay, elevation goes into LF, junction ID goes into the Mike Urban ID. And this is X and Y, and this goes into X and Y. That's good. So we hit run. Okay. Now there are a few things to notice. In principle, it looks fine. If we add the background map, you'd see that the original street is here, and the pipe doesn't follow this street, because this way you cannot import vertices along the pipes or the links. You just have a starting node and an end node. I mean, there are ways, if you have a longer list of nodes, you could also import the intermediate nodes, but usually you don't have that one. You just know from node to node, and it will create straight lines only. That's the first thing to note. And the other thing is that here's something fishy. There's something missing here. And so something went wrong. So let's check the pipes. First, I'll add junction IDs here. Label ID. I'll make it bigger. Yeah, so between junctions 16 and 17, something is wrong. Let's have a look at the pipes. So quick and dirty, I simply sort from node and to node. And you'll see that junction 16 is actually not where it should be, and 17, well, it is, but there is something wrong. And if you look closely here, you'll see that this is not 16, but I6 and I7. So a spelling error in the table. And that's why it wasn't possible to import it properly. However, Mike Plus has imported the pipe with a nominal length and put it somewhere. I simply double click here to zoom to this place. So this is here. You also see it created these dummy junctions with the wrong spelling. And if I zoom out, you'll see that this is somewhere around the real network. So there was an error in the source data. We have to correct either the source data, or we have to correct the model. We'll correct the model, but we don't do that now. We first want to import the hydrants as well. So there's the last section, import hydrants. And here it is important that it comes after the junctions, because now I have to append and skip existing. I pull from my hydrants and I write into MV junction. And I don't want to sort of kill or delete the existing junctions. I just want to add new ones. So that's why it's important. We use append and skip existing. We automap. The hydrant ID goes under my urban ID. We skip size. And we verify and run. Looking a bit at the time. Yeah, and now we have the hydrants as well. They are not connected yet, so it's, you know, the modeler later on has to do something with the hydrants. And now we could correct this one pipe simply by picking the correct junction 16. So this is the correct one. This is just one way of doing it. I mean, there are others. This is the one. Okay. And if you look at the map, here it is. And then in the junctions, we have to delete those two junctions. Here are the hydrants without elevation, by the way. And it has created two junctions with the wrong spelling. So I will delete those two. Okay, so far for import from Excel. I only have a few minutes left, but I want to show you export to CAD. But this is rather quick because I open an existing project. Export CAD, I see already 7 questions. No. So this contains, this is interesting. Okay. So that's more or less the same water distribution system. We have different materials here. We have, where are my pipes? We have different materials, PE and cast iron. And we have different diameters. There's something weird here. I think I messed up my own imports and exports. I've prepared an import export, so let's see. So let's see. The source is now the Mike Plus database. Target type is CAD file, and here I've defined a CAD file. It takes the tanks, exports the geometry, and here we can define a CAD block, which is called circle. This is one of the, well, this is the default block. So it will create a circle in the CAD file. Then we append, it's always append, I can't change that. We append from the junctions, again, into circle with geometry. And finally, we create the pipes. We write into a layer my pipes. Yeah, by the way, these are the layers. Layer my tank, layer my junctions, layer my pipes. So those are the layer names. We create the pipes themselves, but we can also define some properties of the CAD file. The color index 4 means cyan. Now, I have a column comments here, which I can use. And this guy's, I'm not so familiar with CAD, and I would forget that what 4 really means. So I write here 4 is cyan. So any material, polyethylene, will turn out as a cyan line in the CAD file. And anything cast iron, that's the German abbreviation for cast iron, will turn blue. We can also modify the line weight, which is not always visible. It depends on what CAD program you use. 80 millimeters diameter will turn into a 25. Well, it's in a 0.25 millimeter line, and diameter 100 will be 0.35 millimeters, and diameter 150 will 0.50 millimeters. So these are the assignments to the CAD file, and the documentation gives you more details about various CAD file properties. Some are more exotic, and I'm not sure all work, as well as color and line weight. So we verify, we run. This may or may not take longer. Okay, that was, I think, pretty fast. Let's see. That's the one. And I have a CAD viewer here. I don't have a full AutoCAD here, but this is a CAD viewer. And this is how the exported CAD file looks. You can't see the line width here, but at least the colors are visible and they match what we had in Mic Plus. So this is essentially what I wanted to tell you. 2 imports, 1 export. Export to Excel works very similar. Export to Shape works very similar. Import from CAD works very similar. So we have touched some of the main imports and exports you'll probably want to use. With that, I would almost close the session. Just some words about the upcoming events. So we have still 2 webinars planned, one in month's time about building 2D meshes faster with an online tool. And a colleague in Germany just told me they have reduced the mesh building time to 50% using this tool with many scenarios. And in December, getting the most out of hydrological models, to give you an overview about the hydrological models we have. And if you have ideas and suggestions for Mic Plus webinars in spring, either post them here or send an email to Evan. Yeah, we have our own. We have some ideas, but if you have any suggestions, these webinars are for you. So we very much appreciate any good ideas. Have a look at the Mic Plus playlist on YouTube. There is a very new video by Mathieu, who is the product owner of Mic Plus, about 2D cross sections. And with that, I thank you for participating. And if you enjoyed this webinar, please spread the word. We very much need your sort of opinions out in the world. For any questions or suggestions, please contact Evan. If it's about training in general, if you have questions to this webinar in specific, please contact me directly. Thank you so much and have a nice day. Goodbye.